The truth behind Stoicism and happiness in the chaos of modern life, where we're bombarded with messages about what we should want, what we should chase, and what we should feel. Stoicism offers an unexpected path to happiness. At first glance, Stoicism may seem counterintuitive. After all, who wants to hear that happiness is not found in the things we chase or the fleeting pleasures we seek? But what if I told you that the ancient wisdom of Stoicism can help us uncover a deeper, more lasting joy? What if true happiness isn't something we pursue, but something we can cultivate within ourselves, regardless of external circumstances? You see, Stoicism doesn't just offer a philosophy, it reveals a radical shift in how we view the world and ourselves. Are you ready to explore this surprising truth? In today's world, it seems as though happiness is just one more thing we're supposed to buy, achieve, or master. We scroll through social media and see images of perfect lives, perfect bodies, and perfect moments, but none of it feels real, does it? We're constantly told that happiness is a destination, that once we get that promotion, buy that house, or find that perfect relationship, everything will fall into place. But what if happiness doesn't lie in these external achievements? What if happiness isn't about getting more of what we want, but learning to want less, to detach from desires that enslave us? That's where Stoicism comes in. It's not about rejecting pleasure, but about understanding how to find peace and contentment without relying on the world's fleeting rewards. So how do we make sense of it all? First, we must begin with understanding what Stoicism is. It's a philosophy that teaches us how to live in accordance with nature, control our responses, and maintain emotional resilience no matter what happens around. The key is understanding that we cannot control external events, but we can control our reactions to them. This powerful shift in perspective allows us to take back our peace and our power. But here's the catch. It requires us to challenge everything we thought we knew about happiness and success. It's not about accumulating more, but about learning how to live without attachment to those things. Intrigued yet? Imagine for a moment that you no longer feel stress about the future, anxiety about your career, or fear of missing out on the latest trends. Can you picture it? How different would your life be if you didn't need to measure your worth by the number of likes you get or the possessions you own? This is exactly what Stoicism offers. An antidote to the poison of comparison and endless strife. By focusing on what we can control, our own thoughts, emotions, and actions, we regain a sense of freedom that many of us have lost. No longer do we need to measure our happiness against external benchmarks. Instead, we measure it by our ability to find peace, even when the world around us is chaotic. The Stoic concept of apatheia, the idea of being undisturbed by external events, is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean being indifferent or numb to life's challenges. Instead, it's about cultivating inner peace no matter the circumstances. Imagine the power of being able to face any situation. Whether it's a difficult conversation, a financial setback, or a personal loss, with a sense of calm and clarity. Imagine being able to say, I can't control this, but I can control my reaction. That's the true meaning of Stoic happiness, not to avoid pain, but to learn how to handle it with grace and resilience. But why does this matter? Why is this shift in perspective so crucial for our happiness? The answer lies in how we view suffering and desire. In our modern world, we are taught to avoid discomfort at all costs, to always seek pleasure, and to view pain as something to eliminate. But Stoicism challenges this view. It teaches us that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. By reframing our relationship with discomfort, we can stop fearing it and start using it as an opportunity for growth. This, my friends, is where true freedom lies. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Doesn't Stoicism sound a little too cold or detached? Some might think that the Stoic approach to happiness requires us to shut off our emotions, to become robotic and disconnected from the world. But that's far from the truth. Stoicism teaches us to embrace our emotions, not to suppress them, but to understand them. By acknowledging our feelings without letting them control us, we gain the power to navigate life with greater clarity and purpose. Emotional freedom comes not from avoiding feelings, but from learning how to respond to them in a healthy, constructive way. To get there, though, we need to shift our focus. Most of us spend our lives trying to control the uncontrollable, other people, situations, the past, the future. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, our own actions and responses. This is not about being passive or resigning ourselves to fate. On the contrary, Stoics believe in taking deliberate action, but they do so with the understanding that they cannot control everything. This allows them to move through life with a sense of inner peace, free from the anxiety of trying to control the uncontrollable. The key isn't in changing the world, but in changing how we engage with it. Are you ready to embrace this freedom? To stop letting external circumstances dictate your emotional state. To stop tying your happiness to fleeting moments of success or failure. That's what Stoicism offers. A profound, life-altering shift in how we experience happiness. It's not about what happens to us. It's about how we choose to respond. And when we master that, we discover a happiness that no external event can ever take away. This is the essence of Stoic wisdom. To live virtuously, to cultivate inner strength, and to find joy in the simplest things. In the end, happiness isn't something to be pursued. It's something to be created from within. Finally, let's touch on a central tenet of Stoic philosophy. The idea of the dichotomy of control. This simple yet powerful concept teaches us that there are things we can control and things we cannot. And the secret to happiness lies in learning to focus only on the things we can control. The Stoics understood that the more we invest our energy in trying to control the uncontrollable, the more frustration and suffering we invite into our lives. But when we accept the limits of our control, we free ourselves to focus on the present moment and cultivate peace within it. The pursuit of happiness, then, is not a race toward external validation or achievement, but a quiet journey inward, where we find peace and contentment, no matter what life throws our way. This radical shift in perspective is the foundation of Stoic wisdom. Happiness doesn't come from the world around us, but from the world within us. As we explore Stoicism's surprising truths about happiness, we begin to understand that we have the power to choose peace over anxiety, joy over despair, and resilience over defeat. The question is, are you ready to choose happiness? The answer lies in how you choose to respond to life's challenges. And that, my friends, is the key to unlocking true lasting happiness. Understanding Stoicism's path to true contentment. As we continue this exploration of Stoicism and happiness, let's take a moment to address a common misconception, that happiness is some kind of fleeting feeling that we must constantly chase. Modern society teaches us that we need to strive relentlessly to achieve happiness through external sources, whether it's money, status, relationships, or possessions. But what if happiness is not something we need to chase at all? What if instead, happiness is found by letting go of our constant pursuit and learning to be content with what we already have? In Stoicism, happiness isn't a destination, but a state of being that we can choose at any moment. This realization might be the most liberating idea you've encountered. At the heart of Stoicism is a profound understanding of human nature. Stoics believe that our thoughts shape our experiences, and therefore our perception of happiness is entirely within our control. Happiness, according to Stoics, isn't an external outcome but an internal state of peace and equanimity. Imagine for a moment being in the middle of a stressful situation but feeling calm and unshaken. Imagine being able to look at life's challenges without getting overwhelmed by them. This is the power of Stoicism, the ability to cultivate contentment no matter what's happening around us. It's not about avoiding hardship, but about learning how to face it with wisdom and resilience. One of the cornerstones of Stoic thought is the idea of virtue, a focus on living in accordance with wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Stoics argue that true happiness doesn't come from external circumstances, but from living virtuously. It's not the world that makes us happy or unhappy, but our reaction to it. When we prioritize virtue over external gains, we find peace within ourselves, independent of the chaos outside. In essence, the Stoic approach teaches that happiness isn't found in what we acquire, but in how we live. When we focus on cultivating virtues like wisdom, patience, and courage, we unlock an internal source of happiness that cannot be taken away. So why do we constantly seek validation from the outside world, when the greatest source of happiness resides inside us all along? The pursuit of pleasure is another major concept in Stoicism that challenges the conventional wisdom of modern culture. We are often taught to pursue what feels good in the moment, to avoid discomfort and to indulge in pleasures. But Stoicism teaches that pleasure is not the ultimate goal. Instead, we are encouraged to practice apatheia, a state of being that doesn't rely on pleasure or pain. It's about accepting life as it is, without being ruled by the craving for pleasure or the fear of pain. This doesn't mean rejecting joy or experiencing emotions, but it means not allowing these things to define our happiness. Imagine not being a slave to your cravings or desires. What if you could choose when to indulge in pleasure and when to let it go without feeling deprived? That's the freedom Stoicism promises. One of the great lessons of Stoicism is that happiness doesn't come from being surrounded by abundance. In fact, Stoics believe that our attachment to material things can be a major source of suffering. When we tie our happiness to possessions, social status, or external achievements, we inevitably place our peace in the hands of something beyond our control. The Stoics understood that the key to happiness lies not in accumulating wealth, but in practicing contentment with what we already have. When we stop looking for happiness in the outside world and start finding it within, we become truly free. Imagine how different life would feel if you didn't need to constantly seek out new things or experiences to feel satisfied. The Stoic path invites us to cultivate gratitude for what we already possess and to let go of the constant hunger for more. This brings us to the concept of the dichotomy of control, one of the most practical and empowering ideas within Stoicism. The dichotomy of control teaches us to focus our energy only on what we can control, the way we think, the actions we take, and our responses to situations. Everything else is beyond our control. This simple realization can revolutionize how we approach challenges and obstacles in our lives. If we're not in control of the outcome, why should we stress over it? Why should we waste our mental energy on things that we can't change? Instead, we can focus on the things we can influence and release the rest. When we practice this kind of mental discipline, we remove a huge amount of anxiety and stress from our lives. This in itself is a form of happiness, freedom from the constant worry about things outside our control. To illustrate the power of this practice, let's consider a real-life example. Imagine you're facing a tough situation at work, perhaps a difficult project or a tense relationship with a colleague. In that moment, you can either obsess over what you cannot control, the actions of your co-worker, the company's policies, or the outcome of the project. Or you can focus on what you can control, your own behavior, your attitude, and your efforts. Stoicism teaches us to release the urge to control the uncontrollable, and instead focus on doing our best with what we have. This shift in focus allows us to maintain peace of mind, no matter how the external situation unfolds. You might not have control over the result, but you can control your response, and that's where true power lies. Now let's touch on a concept that might sound counterintuitive: the role of adversity in Stoic happiness. The Stoics believe that hardship is an inevitable part of life, and rather than avoiding it, we should embrace it as an opportunity for growth. Difficulties, challenges, and even suffering can be transformative when we approach them with the right mindset. Rather than running from pain, the Stoics taught that we should face it head-on, seeing it as a chance to develop our character and practice virtues like patience, endurance, and wisdom. In fact, Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, saw every challenge as a test of his character, an opportunity to practice being a better person. The Stoics didn't just accept adversity, they welcomed it, knowing that it provided the raw material for growth. Embracing adversity doesn't mean seeking out pain or suffering for its own sake. It means acknowledging that hardship is part of life and that we have the power to choose how we respond to it. Stoicism teaches us that the way we react to challenges determines whether we suffer or grow. When we see obstacles as opportunities to refine our character, we can experience happiness even in the most difficult times. We stop feeling defeated by life's challenges and start seeing them as the building blocks of a stronger, more resilient self. And in doing so, we uncover the deep joy that comes from knowing that we are capable of handling whatever life throws our way. If you still find it hard to accept that happiness can arise from within, consider the example of the Stoic philosophers themselves. These men and women lived through wars, political turmoil, personal loss, and hardship. Yet their teachings still resonate today because they found a way to be at peace amidst chaos. They didn't ignore their emotions. They acknowledged them and then chose how to respond with wisdom and virtue. This is what Stoicism offers, an alternative to the superficial, fleeting happiness we're often taught to chase. Instead of seeking happiness through external rewards, Stoicism teaches us how to find it within ourselves, regardless of the circumstances. And in this truth lies the key to lasting, unshakable contentment. So, what if the secret to true happiness isn't found in the pursuit of more, but in the acceptance of less? What if the more we learn to control our inner world, the less we need to rely on external circumstances to feel fulfilled? This is the essence of Stoic happiness. Learning to master ourselves, to embrace discomfort, and to find peace in the present moment, regardless of what's happening around us. It's not an easy path, but it's one that leads to a profound sense of freedom and joy that no one can take away. The power of mindset and perspective in Stoic happiness. As we delve deeper into the world of Stoicism, we uncover a powerful truth. Our mindset is the key to unlocking happiness. It's not the events that happen to us that determine our emotional state, but the way we interpret and respond to those events. This idea lies at the very core of Stoic philosophy, which teaches us that our thoughts have the power to shape our experience of life. When we shift our perspective, we transform our relationship with the world and ultimately our happiness. But how exactly can we change our mindset in a way that fosters lasting contentment? Let's dive into the heart of Stoic thinking to discover the answer. One of the most impactful lessons in Stoicism is the concept of cognitive reframing, or the ability to change the way we view and interpret situations. Imagine, for example, that you're stuck in traffic. The typical reaction might be frustration, anger, or anxiety as you feel your time slipping away. But the Stoic approach asks us to reframe this experience. Rather than viewing it as an inconvenience, we could see it as an opportunity to practice patience, to be present with ourselves, or even to enjoy a moment of quiet reflection. The traffic itself hasn't changed, but your perception of it has. And that shift in mindset can turn an otherwise unpleasant moment into an opportunity for growth and peace. In many ways, this ability to reframe is the foundation of Stoic happiness. Instead of focusing on how things should be or how they're not meeting our expectations, we are invited to accept them as they are. This doesn't mean passively resigning ourselves to suffering, but rather accepting reality and finding peace within it. The Stoics taught that much of our unhappiness comes from resisting life's inevitable challenges, from wishing for things to be different than they are. By changing our mindset and choosing to embrace what is, we free ourselves from the unnecessary stress of fighting against reality. It's in this shift that we find true freedom, freedom from the tyranny of expectation and the chaos of disappointment. This reframing of our experiences is not just a mental exercise, it's a powerful tool for emotional resilience. When we stop seeing setbacks as signs of failure and instead view them as opportunities to learn and grow, we build emotional strength. It's the difference between feeling defeated by life's difficulties and feeling empowered by them. In this way, Stoicism teaches us that happiness doesn't come from avoiding challenges or seeking a life of comfort. It comes from the ability to face adversity with a calm and rational mind, grounded in the understanding that we have the power to choose our responses. No matter what life throws at us, we always have the ability to choose how we react, and it's in that choice that true happiness resides. Another powerful aspect of Stoicism is the practice of negative visualization, a technique that may seem strange at first but has profound implications for our happiness. Negative visualization involves contemplating the possibility of losing the things we value most, our health, our loved ones, our material possessions, so that we can cultivate an appreciation for them while we still have them. It's not about dwelling on worst-case scenarios or wallowing in pessimism, but rather preparing ourselves mentally for the inevitable impermanence of life. By acknowledging that everything is temporary, we begin to appreciate what we have right now, without taking it for granted. This practice might seem morbid, but it's actually incredibly liberating. It encourages us to live fully in the present moment, to savor the time we have with our loved ones, and to appreciate the simple pleasures of life. By accepting the reality that nothing is permanent, we free ourselves from the fear of loss, because we learn to treasure what we have while it lasts, without clinging to it. This, in turn, allows us to experience a deeper sense of gratitude and joy in our lives. Rather than living in constant fear of losing what we have, we can fully embrace it while it's in our... And when the inevitable changes come, we can face them with equanimity, knowing that we've already made peace with the impermanence of life. A crucial element of Stoic happiness is the practice of self-control, specifically control over our desires and impulses. In a world where instant gratification is just a click away, the ability to delay pleasure and exercise restraint can feel like an almost revolutionary act. Yet, this is exactly what Stoicism teaches. By learning to control our desires, we liberate ourselves from the tyranny of craving and want. The Stoics understood that happiness is not found in the accumulation of external pleasures, but in the mastery of our own inner impulses. The more we learn to moderate our desires, the less dependent we become on the external world to make us happy. This doesn't mean living a life devoid of pleasure or enjoyment. On the contrary, Stoicism encourages us to appreciate life's pleasures without becoming enslaved by them. The key is to find balance, enjoying life's delights without allowing them to control our happiness. In this way, Stoicism teaches us to become the masters of our own minds, not servants of our desires. And in doing so, we unlock a deeper, more lasting form of contentment. Rather than constantly seeking more, we begin to find joy in the simple everyday moments of life. We no longer need to chase after fleeting pleasures, because we have learned to be content with what we already have. Another crucial aspect of Stoicism's approach to happiness is the cultivation of virtue, living a life in accordance with wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. For the Stoics, virtue was the highest good, and living virtuously was the path to happiness. This doesn't mean being perfect or always making the right choices, but it means striving to live in a way that aligns with our highest values. When we act in accordance with virtue, we feel a deep sense of satisfaction that transcends external circumstances. Virtue is a source of internal happiness because it is grounded in our own character, not in the fleeting rewards of the external world. By focusing on cultivating virtue, we stop measuring our happiness by external standards, wealth, fame, success, and begin measuring it by our own growth and integrity. We ask ourselves not how much do I have, but am I living in a way that aligns with my values? When we measure our happiness by the strength of our character, rather than the size of our bank account or the number of social media followers, we discover a more enduring, fulfilling sense of joy. This is the beauty of Stoic philosophy. It teaches us that happiness doesn't depend on what we have or what we achieve, but on who we are and how we live. In this pursuit of virtue, the Stoics encourage us to embrace a mindset of gratitude. Gratitude is not just about appreciating what we have, but recognizing that everything we experience, good or bad, can contribute to our growth and development. When we practice gratitude, we shift our focus from what's lacking in our lives to what's already present. And in doing so, we cultivate a deep sense of contentment and peace. The more we appreciate the world around us, the more we realize how much we have to be grateful for. And in this gratitude, we find true happiness, an inner joy that isn't dependent on external circumstances, but on our own ability to see the good in everything. Ultimately, Stoicism teaches us that happiness is not an elusive goal to be pursued through external means, but a state of mind to be cultivated through self-discipline, virtue, and perspective. The more we align our thoughts, actions, and values with Stoic principles, the more we discover that happiness is not something we need to chase, but something we can create within ourselves. By changing our mindset, embracing the present moment, and focusing on what we can control, we unlock a happiness that no external force can ever take away. And in this discovery, we find a peace and contentment that lasts a lifetime. Building emotional resilience through Stoic practices. At the core of Stoicism lies the remarkable ability to cultivate emotional resilience, a quality that is essential for navigating life's ups and downs with grace and stability. Emotional resilience is not about suppressing feelings or avoiding challenges. Rather, it's about developing the capacity to withstand adversity, maintain mental clarity, and respond to life's obstacles without being overwhelmed by them. Stoicism offers a powerful toolkit for building this resilience, which ultimately leads to a deep and lasting sense of inner peace and happiness. But how do we begin to cultivate this resilience? Let's explore some of the key Stoic practices that can help us build emotional fortitude and maintain our calm even in the face of life's most challenging moments. The first practice we must embrace is the art of mindful detachment, the ability to detach ourselves from the emotional turbulence caused by external events. While we can't control the world around us, we can control how we choose to respond to it. Think about it. When something upsetting happens, it's easy to get caught up in the emotional storm of frustration, anger, or disappointment. But the Stoics teach us that we have the power to step back from our initial reactions and observe them without judgment. This doesn't mean ignoring our emotions or denying their existence. Rather, it's about recognizing that we don't have to be ruled by them. We can acknowledge our feelings, but we don't have to let them dictate our actions or our happiness. The practice of mindful detachment allows us to maintain emotional clarity, even in stressful situations. When we can detach from the immediate emotional charge of a situation, we create the space to choose our responses more wisely. This space gives us the freedom to act in alignment with our values, rather than being swept away by reactive emotions. Imagine being able to remain calm and composed during an argument, or to face a setback at work without allowing frustration or anger to cloud your judgment. This is the power of emotional resilience, a power that Stoicism teaches us to cultivate by taking a step back and choosing to act from a place of inner strength and wisdom. Another critical Stoic practice for emotional resilience is negative visualization. While it may seem counterintuitive, imagining the worst-case scenario can actually help us better handle adversity when it arises. By contemplating the possibility of losing something we value, whether it's our job, our health, or a loved one, we prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally for the inevitable uncertainties of life. This practice doesn't foster negativity. Instead, it helps us appreciate the present moment more fully and appreciate what we have while we still have it. It also reduces the fear of loss, because when we've already mentally prepared for it, we are better equipped to face it with equanimity when it happens. Negative visualization can also be a tool for building gratitude. The more we practice acknowledging the impermanence of the things we hold dear, the more we cultivate an attitude of gratitude for what we have in the present moment. By remembering that nothing in life is guaranteed, we begin to appreciate the blessings we often take for granted. The love of friends and family, the beauty of nature, the simple joys of everyday life. This practice can help us stay grounded even when life presents us with unexpected challenges. When we remember that life is transient and unpredictable, we find ourselves more appreciative of the fleeting moments that make it meaningful. Equally essential for building emotional resilience is the Stoic practice of self-examination, the act of regularly reflecting on our thoughts, actions, and emotions. The Stoics believe that self-awareness is the first step towards self-mastery. By regularly examining our thoughts and behaviors, we can identify areas of our lives that need improvement and begin to align our actions with our highest value. This practice allows us to catch negative thought patterns before they spiral out of control, and to correct course when we find ourselves veering off track. It also helps us identify what truly matters to us, so we can focus our energy on what aligns with our goals and values, rather than being distracted by fleeting desires or societal pressure. Self-examination is a tool for emotional resilience, because it fosters mindfulness and intentionality in our actions. When we practice self-reflection, we gain insight into the sources of our emotional responses and can choose to reframe or reorient our reactions. Instead of reacting impulsively to stressors, we develop the ability to respond thoughtfully and intentionally. This gives us greater control over our emotional state and helps us build inner strength in the face of external challenges. By regularly checking in with ourselves, we ensure that we are living in accordance with our values, which in turn leads to greater peace and fulfillment. In addition to these practices, the Stoics encourage us to embrace adversity as an inevitable part of life. Rather than avoiding difficulties or wishing for a life free of challenges, Stoicism teaches us to welcome adversity as an opportunity for growth. The Stoics understood that hardship is not only inevitable but necessary for the development of virtue. Every setback, every challenge, and every obstacle is an opportunity to practice wisdom, courage, and resilience. By reframing adversity as a chance to grow stronger, we transform obstacles into stepping stones on our path to happiness. This mindset shift allows us to approach difficulties with a sense of curiosity and purpose rather than fear or avoidance. For example, when faced with a difficult project at work, instead of feeling overwhelmed or frustrated, we can view it as an opportunity to develop our problem-solving skills or to demonstrate our perseverance. When we encounter conflict in relationships, we can use it as a chance to practice patience, empathy, and communication. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to refine our character and develop the virtues that the Stoics held so dear. By embracing adversity as a teacher rather than an enemy, we cultivate emotional resilience and gain a deeper sense of peace, knowing that we are capable of handling whatever life throws our way. The Stoic idea of living in accordance with nature is also critical for building emotional resilience. By aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life and accepting the inevitable rhythms of joy, sorrow, success, and failure, we free ourselves from unrealistic expectations. The Stoics understood that life is unpredictable, and that it's not our job to control every outcome, but to respond wisely to whatever comes our way. This acceptance of life's impermanence helps us avoid frustration and disappointment, because we recognize that everything, both good and bad, is temporary. This understanding fosters peace and resilience as we learn to navigate life with a sense of calm and equanimity regardless of the circumstances. The concept of Stoic joy is another vital aspect of emotional resilience. Unlike the fleeting pleasures that society often promotes, Stoic joy is an inner sense of contentment that comes from living virtuously and in harmony with nature. This joy is not dependent on external circumstances, but on our ability to maintain inner peace and clarity. When we cultivate Stoic joy, we are no longer dependent on the ups and downs of life to determine our happiness. Instead, we find contentment in the pursuit of virtue in the small moments of life, and in our ability to maintain calm in the face of adversity. The final practice of Stoicism that contributes to emotional resilience is mindful acceptance, the ability to accept the things we cannot change with grace and humility. Life often presents us with situations that are beyond our control, and it's easy to become frustrated or upset when things don't go the way we want them to. But the Stoics teach us that true happiness comes not from controlling everything around us, but from accepting what we cannot change. This acceptance doesn't mean resignation or passivity. Rather, it's a recognition that we can choose how we respond to life's challenge. When we let go of the need to control everything, we free ourselves from the stress of trying to force outcomes, and instead we can focus on what we can control, our own reaction. By practicing acceptance, we can navigate life's uncertainties with a sense of peace and confidence, knowing that we are capable of handling whatever comes our way. This doesn't mean we won't feel disappointment or frustration. It simply means we won't let those feelings define us or dictate our happiness. The more we practice acceptance, the more resilient we become, able to weather life's storms with grace and strength. As we embrace these Stoic practices, we build a foundation of emotional resilience that empowers us to live with greater peace, clarity, and joy. Stoicism teaches us that happiness doesn't come from avoiding hardship or seeking comfort at all costs, but from cultivating inner strength, accepting what we cannot change, and responding wisely to life's challenge. By developing emotional resilience, we gain the freedom to live in alignment with our values, regardless of the external circumstances. And in this freedom, we discover a happiness that is lasting, unshakable, and truly our own. The role of virtue and moral excellence in achieving happiness. The pursuit of happiness, according to Stoic philosophy, is not about seeking pleasure or avoiding pain. It is about cultivating virtue and aligning our actions with moral excellence. The Stoics believe that happiness is the natural result of living a virtuous life. But what does it mean to live virtuously? How does moral excellence lead to happiness? And why is virtue considered the highest good above all external achievements or possessions? To understand the profound link between virtue and happiness, we must explore the Stoic conception of virtue in depth. At the heart of Stoic thought lies the idea that virtue is the only true source of happiness. For Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, the pursuit of virtue was not a mere moral ideal, but a practical guide for living a meaningful and fulfilled life. Virtue, in the Stoic sense, is living in accordance with reason and nature, embodying qualities such as wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. These virtues are not just abstract ideals, but practical skills that we can develop through intentional practice. The Stoics believed that if we live virtuously, we will find happiness not in the fleeting pleasures of the material world, but in the strength and integrity of our character. This is where the Stoic concept of eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or living in accordance with nature, comes into play. Eudaimonia is the ultimate goal of Stoic philosophy, and it is achieved not through external success or wealth, but through the cultivation of virtue. The Stoics argued that the pursuit of wealth, fame, or pleasure is ultimately empty because these things are outside of our control and subject to change. True happiness, on the other hand, comes from within, and it is rooted in the cultivation of a virtuous character. When we embody virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline, we align ourselves with the natural order of the universe. and in doing so, we experience deep and lasting contentment. In practical terms, living virtuously means making choices that are guided by reason, not by impulse or emotion. It means striving to act justly, to seek wisdom in all things, and to maintain courage in the face of difficulty. For the Stoics, virtue is not a passive state. It is an active practice that requires effort and intentionality. Every decision, every action is an opportunity to embody virtue and to build a life that is in harmony with our highest values. And when we live in alignment with our values, we experience a deep sense of fulfillment and peace, regardless of what happens in the external world. Let's break down the 4 cardinal virtues of Stoicism: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, and explore how each of these qualities contributes to our happiness. Wisdom is the ability to see the world clearly, to make decisions based on reason rather than emotion, and to understand the true nature of things. In the Stoic tradition, wisdom is not just about intellectual knowledge, but about the practical application of that knowledge in our daily lives. Wisdom enables us to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not, and it guides us in choosing how to respond to the challenges we face. By cultivating wisdom, we develop the ability to navigate life's complexities with clarity and purpose. And this sense of clarity and understanding leads to happiness, because it allows us to live authentically in accordance with our true nature. Courage, in the Stoic sense, is not just physical bravery, but the mental and emotional fortitude to face fear, adversity, and uncertainty with resolve. It is the courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult, and the bravery to face life's inevitable challenges without fear or hesitation. The Stoics understood that life is full of difficulties, illness, loss, failure, and that courage is the virtue that enables us to endure these hardships with dignity. Courage allows us to face suffering without being overwhelmed by it, and it gives us the strength to take action when necessary. In this way, courage is essential to living a fulfilling life, because it empowers us to face challenges with equanimity and resilience, rather than avoiding or succumbing to them. Justice is the virtue of treating others with fairness, integrity, and respect. For the Stoics, justice was not just a social virtue, but a personal one. It means acting in harmony with others, recognizing our shared humanity and contributing to the common good. Justice is about living with honor and fairness, ensuring that our actions promote the well-being of others as well as our own. The Stoics believe that happiness is found not in self-centeredness, but in living a life that is beneficial to others and to society as a whole. When we act justly, we create harmonious relationships and build trust, which in turn fosters a sense of peace and fulfillment. Finally, temperance is the virtue of moderation and self-control. It is the ability to resist the temptation of excess and to live in balance with our desires. In a world that encourages indulgence and excess, temperance is the practice of choosing what is truly necessary and avoiding unnecessary distractions. It is about recognizing that our desires are not inherently bad, but that we should not let them control us. By practicing temperance, we gain mastery over our impulses, which allows us to live a life of greater focus, purpose, and fulfillment. When we learn to moderate our desires and act in alignment with reason, we experience a deeper sense of contentment, free from the constant pursuit of fleeting pleasures. These 4 cardinal virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, are the foundation of Stoic happiness. When we strive to embody these virtues in our daily lives, we build a character that is not dependent on external circumstances, but rooted in our own integrity and wisdom. Virtue is not a means to an end, it is the end itself. The Stoics believed that the more we align our actions with virtue, the more we cultivate a sense of inner peace and contentment. This is the key to lasting happiness, living a life that is in accordance with our highest values and principles, regardless of what happens around us. But how do we put these virtues into practice in our daily lives? It starts with being intentional about our choices and actions. Each day we have the opportunity to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Every decision, whether big or small, is an opportunity to practice virtue and to build a life that is grounded in moral excellence. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress and striving to be the best version of ourselves. By reflecting on our actions and learning from our mistakes, we continually refine our character and move closer to the Stoic ideal of eudaimonia, flourishing in harmony with our true nature. In this way, virtue becomes the pathway to happiness. As we cultivate wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, We find that happiness is not something we seek outside of ourselves, but something we create from within. Happiness is the natural result of living a virtuous life, because virtue leads to a deeper sense of fulfillment, meaning and purpose. By focusing on the development of our character and the cultivation of moral excellence, we unlock a happiness that is lasting, unshakable, and completely within our control. Thus, the Stoic pursuit of virtue is not just an abstract philosophical idea. It is a practical guide for living a life of happiness and fulfillment. By living virtuously, we create the conditions for happiness to arise naturally, regardless of our external circumstances. And in this pursuit of virtue, we find a happiness that is grounded in our own integrity, wisdom, and strength of character. Happiness that no one and nothing can take away. The Stoic path to inner peace and lasting happiness. In our exploration of Stoicism, we've come to understand that happiness, as defined by this ancient philosophy, is not something external to be sought or achieved. Instead, it is an internal state, one that comes from within by cultivating the virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, and by practicing mental discipline, resilience, and rationality. The Stoic path to happiness is about aligning ourselves with nature, accepting what is outside our control and focusing on what we can change, our own thoughts, emotions, and actions. As we close this journey, we must focus on the culmination of Stoic teachings, inner peace. This inner peace, or ataraxia, is the foundation of lasting happiness and the ultimate goal of the Stoic way of life. The pursuit of ataraxia, a state of inner tranquility free from disturbance or anxiety, lies at the heart of Stoic happiness. To the Stoics, the external world, with its chaos, unpredictability, and turbulence, will always be beyond our control. Yet in every moment we have the choice to cultivate our internal world. When we focus on controlling what we can, our thoughts, emotions, judgments, and actions, we can achieve a peace that remains undisturbed by external events. Stoicism teaches us that our reactions, not the events themselves, define our inner peace. So how do we find this inner tranquility in a world filled with challenges? The first step is through the Stoic practice of acceptance. Acceptance is not passive resignation, rather it is an active embrace of reality as it is. We cannot control everything in life. Illness, loss, failure, or injustice are often beyond our reach. But what we can control is how we respond. By accepting that life is inherently uncertain and impermanent, we free ourselves from the emotional turmoil that comes from resisting or resenting what happens to us. Acceptance allows us to release attachment to outcomes and to focus on the present moment. When we stop fighting against reality, we stop causing unnecessary suffering in our minds. We learn to meet life on its terms, knowing that we are not victims of circumstance but active participants in how we navigate. A powerful Stoic technique that complements acceptance is the dichotomy of control. The dichotomy of control, introduced by Epictetus, teaches us to distinguish between what is within our power and what is not. We cannot control the actions of others, the weather, or the larger forces of the world, but we can control how we choose to react to them. We can control our thoughts, our desires, our impulses, and our judgments. When we focus our energy on what is within our control and release the rest, we free ourselves from unnecessary stress and frustration. This focus on what is truly within our power is liberating. It is the key to reclaiming our peace and achieving happiness, regardless of external circumstances. In practice, the dichotomy of control invites us to ask ourselves, what can I control in this situation? And what is beyond my reach? By making this distinction, we immediately relieve ourselves of the burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. We find our peace in the simple understanding that we do not need to change the world to be happy. We need only to change our perception of it. When we align our actions with reason and virtue, we can move through life with calm and composure, knowing that we are doing our part to live well, even if we cannot change the outcome. Another important aspect of the Stoic path to inner peace is mindfulness. The Stoics were, in many ways, the pioneers of mindfulness, practicing awareness of their thoughts, actions, and emotions in order to live more conscious. By focusing on the present moment and cultivating awareness, we can free ourselves from the endless cycle of worry about the future or regret over the past. The Stoics remind us that the present moment is all we have. It is the only time in which we can act, learn, grow, and experience life. By being mindful of our thoughts and actions, we become more attuned to our inner state and better able to make conscious, deliberate choices that align with our values. Mindfulness, as taught by the Stoics, is not about trying to empty the mind or escape from discomfort. It is about recognizing our thoughts without becoming attached to them. It's about observing our feelings without allowing them to control us. In moments of stress or difficulty, mindfulness helps us pause, breathe, and choose how we respond. Rather than being swept away by the tide of emotions, we take a step back and ask ourselves, what would the wise and virtuous person do in this situation? This simple practice can bring us tremendous peace and clarity, allowing us to stay centered even in the midst of turmoil. One of the key practices for achieving inner peace is the art of reflection, regularly examining our thoughts, actions, and beliefs. Self-reflection, according to the Stoics, is essential for personal growth and tranquility. By reflecting on our actions and thoughts, we gain insight into our true nature, our motivations, and our desires. We learn to identify the sources of our anxiety or distress, and we begin to recognize the patterns of behavior that lead to suffering. Through self-reflection, we can make adjustments, align ourselves more closely with our values, and free ourselves from unnecessary mental burdens. It's through this practice that we learn to discern what is truly important in life and what we can let go of. Reflection helps us shed the weight of unnecessary desires, regrets, and fears, allowing us to walk the path of virtue with a light heart. In Stoicism, self-discipline is another vital tool for attaining inner peace. The Stoics emphasize the importance of controlling our impulses, desires, and emotions in order to live harmoniously with nature and reason. The more we practice self-control, the less we are swayed by external circumstances. Whether it's resisting the urge to indulge in unhealthy habits, choosing not to react to provocation, or cultivating patience in difficult situations, self-discipline gives us the power to maintain our inner calm and focus. When we act with intention, rather than being slaves to our desires, we experience a profound sense of freedom. This freedom from our impulses, from external circumstances, and from the expectations of others, creates the foundation for lasting inner peace. At the heart of Stoic teachings is the cultivation of gratitude. The Stoics believe that gratitude is a powerful antidote to dissatisfaction and a key to lasting happiness. Instead of focusing on what we lack or what we want, we focus on what we have: our health, our relationships, the opportunities before us, and the simple pleasures of daily life. Gratitude shifts our mindset from scarcity to abundance, reminding us that happiness does not depend on acquiring more, but on appreciating what is already present in our life. When we practice gratitude, we train our minds to focus on the positive, to find joy in the small moments, and to embrace life as it is. This shift in perspective leads to greater contentment and peace. As we continue on our Stoic journey, we are reminded that happiness is not found in external circumstances, but in our inner state of being. By practicing the Stoic principles of acceptance, mindfulness, self-discipline, self-reflection, and gratitude, we can cultivate a deep and lasting inner peace. This peace is not fragile or dependent on the changing tides of life, but steadfast and enduring. It is a peace that comes from within, rooted in our alignment with nature and reason. And it is in this inner peace that true happiness resides. Happiness that is not dependent on external circumstances, but on our ability to control our own thoughts, actions, and reactions. The Stoic path to happiness is not a passive one. It is a journey of self-mastery, resilience, and growth. It is about embracing life as it is, taking responsibility for our own happiness, and living with intention. And when we walk this path, we find a happiness that is not fleeting or superficial, but deep, lasting, and unshakable, rooted in our inner peace and our ability to live in harmony with nature and reason. In this way, Stoicism reveals a truth that is both surprising and profound. Happiness is not something to be pursued, but something to be cultivated from within through the choices we make and the way we live our lives.